There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. It's time for a brand new edition of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Listen, I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I've talked about that on the air in the past. And one thing had a very weird impact on me. Growing up, my babysitter would talk about this giant flying bird that had been seen in Chicago and how it would snatch up children. And that terrified me. As a kid, I was absolutely freaked out by the idea that there was a giant bird anywhere, first of all. And second of all, I didn't want to be downtown. So I avoided it at all costs. And when my parents were going to take us downtown, I was not a happy camper. Now, there's a lot of weird legends and stories that surround the Chicagoland area. Joining us on the air right now, Lon Strickler. And Lon is here to chat with us about the very weird sightings that have been taking place in 2017. But rolling them out even further out, Lon, it's great to have you back with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Man, is there anything you don't do? You're a researcher and investigator at Phantoms and Monsters. You're a researcher and investigator at Pennsylvania Investigations. You're an author, writer, a blogger at Phantoms and Monsters. You host Arcane Radio. Gee, do you have time to even breathe?
Yeah, I'll admit I'm waist deep in this stuff. I kind of made a commitment to this when I started the blog back in 2005. Now, although I've been doing this a long time before that, but it's kind of gotten a little more hectic around here, especially with what's going on in Chicago. So, I do a lot, but I enjoy doing it.
Well, talk to me, Lon, if you don't mind, about kind of setting this for us, setting the tone on this. Like you said, that was a story I remember as a kid, being told about this big bird. And you and I were talking off air that there have been weird legends of winged creatures in the Chicagoland area dating far back. How far back do we actually know of these stories taking place?
Well, as far as recorded sightings, I can really only go back maybe 20 years or so. Of course, there have been Thunderbird sightings in Illinois and Indiana for many, many years. And there was a supposed incident that happened in Illinois where this child was this large bird tried to abduct this child. And but there have been other sightings as well. I mean, there have been sightings of beings that were winged and had these bat-like wings like what's going on in Chicago now, or was going on this year, as well as there have been pterosaur-like sightings throughout Illinois and Indiana also. So this isn't really something new, but of course it's going on in an urban area like Chicago, and so many sightings during a 6-month period, this really stands out.
Yeah, it does. What a strange phenomenon. Now let's start to talk about this. 2017 has really lit up, but was there another little cluster of these that took place that I read about not too long ago? The little cluster of these kind of winged creature sightings, this Mothman of Chicago, if you will.
Yeah, there were 3 sightings in the late summer and fall of 2011, and there were 3 sightings over 3 months. And they were located in South Chicago. Of course, a photograph was taken of the first sighting, which some people described as a oversized sugar glider. In fact, that's probably the best photo we've gotten of any of these sightings over the years. Though I really don't know what it is. I mean, it kind of looks, I don't know, it doesn't really look like much of anything that, we'd be familiar with. It doesn't look like the Mothman, doesn't look like what people are seeing now or had been seeing this year. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was. It's hard to get a depth on it, to how large it actually was. But it is a photograph of something very unusual.
All right, and you see photographs like this. Who starts to look at these? I mean, are they taken to zoologists? Are they taken to universities to try to break down and understand what we're looking at? Or do the more academic side of this just, turn a blind eye to it and refuse to even look at it or acknowledge what could be going on?
Well, I remember at the time, in 2011, and it wasn't long after the photograph was taken, I had a discussion with Josh Warren, and he took the photograph to a zoologist who couldn't explain what it was to him. So, as far as a professional looking at it, that's the only time I know of.
And what was the overall take on it? I mean, did they weigh in on any way, shape, or form of what they thought this creature might be?
No, it was something they had never seen before.
Strange. Okay, now this new spate that's taken place in 2017, that was 3 times over the period of a year in the past. Now, this new launch of sightings, how many have been seen so far in the year 2017?
As far as sightings that I feel that were actually seen and reported, there's about 54 of them.
54, Lon?
Yeah. We've had other sightings that I've questioned and that I've removed from the queue, but...
All right, well, talk me through that aspect of it. What about a sighting makes you look at it and say, this is definitely garbage? This is something I just don't believe.
Well, I guess it's more of, do I believe the witnesses and how they're presenting it to me? And if they start embellishing, or they describe something that just doesn't fit with what's been going on. And of course, you always get people who usually try to take a previous report and kind of work their way around it and try to make it as theirs as well. And we've had a few of those, but it hasn't been a whole lot. I'd say between Manuel Navarrete and myself, I think we probably have had 3 very questionable reports that we just didn't bother with. And the rest that we followed up on, they kind of panned out. We do the follow-up. One of the people in the task force who lived in Chicago would go and follow up the location, possibly talk to the witness in person, and give their take on it. And we'd come together and decide what we thought was going on, and what we thought the situation involved, if it was factual or seemed factual.
That's the weird part to me, is how do you know when somebody starts to embellish or maybe stretch a little bit of the truth? Let's face it, Lon, these aren't just sightings of, oh yeah, I saw, a tiger at the zoo. This is seeing a flying winged creature. It already starts to sound like it's an insane claim right from the get-go. And I'm not putting it down, but I'm just thinking, where's the defining line that's like, now this is just a little too much like crazy for even me to believe. And don't you find that in some cases, the weirder and the crazier the allegations, that maybe there's more truth behind those than the ones where it's just simply, oh, my wife and I were walking out, we saw this winged creature fly from one building to another, and then it vanished. To me, that seems like it could be somebody just trying to insert themselves in this new history.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you get people that make these descriptions and just sound like it's totally unbelievable and they don't really believe what they saw, I mean, you really stand up and notice that. One thing about the number of all the witnesses that we believed, and, of course, 54 witnesses or 54 sightings, were those that when we would interview them, they they would not try to embellish. And in other words, we would try to get them to embellish. That's a technique I use for most witness sightings where I do an interview with them. I try to put in their head or try to insinuate, well, maybe did you see this and this, or was, and they usually stick to the story. And that's unusual.
Isn't that kind of a bit of a danger, though, Lon? Because sometimes you play something, and hey, listen, as a parent, we do this with our kids all the time, right? Where we, without being specific to what I'm talking about for those younger people listening right now, there are certain things that happen at different times of year. And we talk about these things, and we put in their head, don't you remember when we saw this out the window, don't you? And sometimes they start remembering those moments. Yeah. If we lead someone and we tell them, and did it do this? Did you see that? Did they ever come back to you later and go, you know what, Lon, I was thinking about it, and damn it, I think you're right. I do remember it with, glowing eyes and a Santa hat. Then all of a sudden, how do you know that it wasn't something that you're triggering an actual memory as opposed to implanting a false memory?
Well, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. I have never had any of these witnesses come back to me, and as far as I know, Manuel didn't either, come back to us and expound on the story. They stick to what they tell us originally, and that's, like I said, that's very unusual. I'll get just for instance, I'll get an email from a witness. They tell me what they saw. I'll get on the horn with them and talk to them, and they will not deviate from what they told me originally. Or with somebody would call me on the phone and I'd talk to them, with the original report. They would not deviate from what they originally said. It's almost like these witnesses get an imprint and they don't go beyond that.
All right. What I do want to know then, and I get that kind of idea, but don't you even have to question people that want to come forward to talk about this? Because let's face it, automatically that puts them in the vein that most people are going to just think they're crazy. Mm-hmm. Isn't it the ones that in my history of doing this, when somebody doesn't really necessarily want to come forward to tell their story and they're kind of prodded along by friends that they're like, no, you got to tell them this story. They need to know this. To me, those seem like a much more credible witness than people that want to come forward and talk about the crazy thing that they're seeing.
Well, that has happened. A lot of these witnesses were talked into reporting it by family or friends.
All right, now
they didn't go to me first. They went to them and they discussed it. Then they got a hold of us.
Now, when you're referring, people are referring to this as the Mothman of Chicago, this creature. Now, is it only being seen in the urban areas of Chicago, or are we seeing this creature anywhere else in the United States, or anywhere else throughout Illinois, rather?
Well, we've been getting reports in the suburbs of Chicago, and as far actually into Indiana, which really isn't that far from the city limits. So, northern Indiana, northwest Indiana, there have been reports as well. But there have been several reports west of the city, southwest of the city. It's not just in Chicago City, though most of the sightings have been concentrated in the city limits. We are getting reports. I am getting reports of other areas. In fact, I've had two very, very good, well-documented reports in Pasco County, Florida during this period of a flying being seen hovering in the air above piles of dead deer this thing apparently killed. I've had two different people tell me the same story. I had another one down near Austin, Texas, of a being that this gentleman saw on the roof of his neighbor's house, very much like what people are seeing in Chicago.
All right, well, describe it to me. Yeah, describe to me in detail now what this being looks like, and at what times of day are we most witnesses seeing this?
It's mostly between 9 and 11 o'clock p.m. local time. The average description is a 6 to 7 foot tall being, thin, with a thin head. Some have red eyes, some don't. They have wings that spread out to about 10 to 12 foot.
Now, do we know that these are red eyes, or are they a shine from the eyes? Do you know?
Some of them have been fairly bright.
Okay, as though they are glowing and emitting a light, not just shining. Okay.
Like I said, the wings span from anywhere to 10 to 12 foot wide. The wing structures have deviated a bit. Early on, they were more like the Mothman insect-like wings, and we had a couple that were described as Lacusa or owl-like wings. But overall, and I'd say 50 of the sightings have been these bat-like structures with the membrane and, where to see light shining through the wings, the wing membrane.
All right. Now, how does that align with the very famous sightings of the Mothman from Point Pleasant?
Well, it really doesn't. I mean, other than the red eyes, that's about it. But of course, the Mothman was described as having the eyes were kind of inset into the body. There wasn't really a head. The wings were like that of a moth or a butterfly, though it did have 2 legs and stood. But both of these sightings, the ones in Chicago and the ones in Point Pleasant, had arms that were either part of the wing or detached. There were 2 different descriptions, and that's been the same way here.
Wait, describe that to me again. What's detached?
The arms. In other words, the arms are part of the wing, were actually attached to the wing, which allowed the wing to move. Then there have been reports of detached arms, like human arms, detached from the wings, and the wings would be structured from the back.
Almost like a moth.
Absolutely.
And the other viewing of it is more like a bat-like creature. Could we be talking about 2 different species of creature?
Oh, I believe that may very well be true. And in fact, I think the sightings in Chicago involved at least 3 different beings.
Really? You believe it's 3 different beings? Okay.
At least.
Walk me through your theory on that. Why do you believe it might be 3 different beings? Aside from, like you just said, that there are differences in the way they're being described. It's hard enough to believe that there may be one of these creatures, but the possibility is that there may be multiple versions. I need to know where this is coming from.
Well, location for one thing, where some of them have been seen at. For instance, we had different groups of sightings in different areas. In particular, like little village area, we've had 7 sightings there. We've had down by the lakeshore, up and down the lakeshore. It have been many sightings along there as well. Then we've had sightings in Indiana, and of course a few of the sightings out in the suburbs, which were described more like in particular the one out in Bolingbrook, which didn't take flight at all. It was just standing there. And the wings were wrapped around the body. And but that, as well as some of the characteristics, some of the sightings were very fleeting. Some of the other sightings seemed that it wanted to be seen and even made an attempt to come back and be seen again. Some were somewhat aggressive. There were a few different aspects of it. I mean, of course, not all of them had the red eyes, even though I can understand if this thing was flying, you wouldn't see your red eyes if it was, if it was faced away. So, there's just there's just different characteristics that we had to take into account. And I believe, and I don't know if really the task force or the other people that were investigating believe this, but I think they probably do, that there were at least more than 3 of them.
When these type of sightings start stirring up, now automatically people think of what happened in Point Pleasant with the bridge collapse, right? And that was, now again, we're discussing that these might be two totally different, or in this case, maybe four different totally, unique species unto themselves. But has there been any activity tracked to these creatures that would make sense? Is there anything going on along those areas that is currently amping up? Has that been where there has been trouble with citizens? Has it been areas where there is a high crime population, a bridge going up, anything that could lead us to see that this is a precursor to something negative coming?
Not really. Like I said, I had the 7 sightings in the little village area, which is a high drug area. But other than that, I can't really think of any other connection that is being made. And as far as the Harbinger theory, like with the Mothman and what other people have said at other events, I don't really buy into that. The Mothman Point Pleasant, I think, was kind of used as an excuse for what happened with the bridge collapse. And, John Keel kind of, he kind of went along with that, kind of went with it in his writings. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen, and I'm not saying something may happen here in Chicago, but I just don't really buy into that theory. And in fact, during July and August of this year, I literally would get 20 to more calls per day just from citizens of in and around Chicago who were asking me questions because they were afraid something was going to happen.
Right. I mean, that does kind of beget the thought, and people are a little nervous about is it a precursor to something? What is your take on sightings like this when they start happening? Again, to say a Bigfoot sighting, even a chupacabra type sighting, those are usually in desolate, remote areas, or they're in areas where they're heavily wooded populations, so that these creatures may theoretically have a place to live and exist. What do you make of it with these flying beings? Where are they coming from, Lon?
I believe personally that there has been some type of doorway opened up to an alternate reality somehow. Now, how it happened, we've had, we got a few working theories, though, some people have thought it may be something to do with the occult, or it had been summoned by somebody.
Wouldn't it seem, though, if it was summoned, that they would be doing some kind of damage, that some kind of negativity would be in their wake, not just visual sightings? Or is it enough for these things being seen and frightening people? Is that enough of an impact and a ripple effect for these beings if they truly are, being summoned to do something?
Well, that may be. I mean, I have always thought that the Mothman at Point Pleasant was a summoned being. I feel that there was a strong spiritual presence in the area that actually summoned this thing. And there have been sightings of Mothman-like beings in and around the area of Point Pleasant since that time, and still are going on. They're just not as well known or not reported as much as they were at that time. But no, I think it had something to do with the Native American influence and at the in Point Pleasant, because there was a lot of things that happened there. There was a lot of death and a lot of violence in Point Pleasant and around Point Pleasant. That this it may very well have been a summoned being, like a sentry or a something to watch over, to guard something. And I think that may be what happened here in Chicago. But unfortunately, I think if the gateway was open somehow, and for whatever reason, that unfortunately more beings have come in and out of that, and it's probably was open for quite a long time.
So you believe these might have been called in as a positive force, as something to watch over, guard, protect, whatever you want to say, that may be what's actually taking place.
Yeah, that that is a possibility. I've looked at both sides of this.
Well, are there any kind of creatures that fit the Native American culture or supernatural realm that these figures seem to align with, that we can say, you know what, this sounds remarkably like the Native American hapupu bird or something, that is known to be a protector of the land? Or is there, a tie to it being, well, we know from the demonic realm that these match the sightings of the, Skaya demons or whatever? Is there anything that we can connect these two?
Not really. I have looked into the culture of the indigenous people that lived in that area, and I really can't figure out if there's any connection to that at all. I don't know if it's something to do, just like, again, what I'm saying with these Hispanic communities, like in Little Village. This may actually have been some type of a bruja or a witch that may have summoned something. And, of course, these drug cartels from Mexico really are into the Santeria and San Muerta religions as part of a cult, as part of the religion. And, maybe a strong force got together and summoned one of these things, and they got more than what they bargained for.
Oh, and at first my mind went to, well, what the hell does the Mexican culture have to do with that from Mexico? But I forgot that there's a heavy Mexican culture within the boundaries of the Chicagoland area.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think Chicago overall has probably got the largest Hispanic community other than maybe Los Angeles here in the United States.
All right. Then I wonder what Texas would say about that, but I'll give you that, maybe. I know, Lon.
They call it Little Mexico. The little village is called like Little Mexico or Mexico away from Mexico or whatever. But I tell you, if you've ever gone there and you talk to some of the people that live in that, it really is. It's I would say it's at least 80 or 90% Hispanic. It's very deep culture there. And
well, have you, as an investigator, boots on the ground, have you gone there to speak to anybody in the Hispanic culture to ask them if they're familiar with what this creature would be in connection to any of these ritualistic ideas or notions that they may be employing?
Yeah, Manuel has been doing that. He's been going into Little Village. I have been talking to people, interviewing people since I live in Pennsylvania, so I can't very well go there all the time and do that. But I have talked to several people. Some of the other investigators have as well, and we're investigating that. That's part of the investigation. This is something that's ongoing. Who knows? This may start back up because the sightings have waned off. This may start back up when the weather gets warmer again. So who knows? But, we're going to be ready for it.
All right. So it has tapered off. Have there been any strange or, I guess, unsolved crimes that have been taking place? Any kind of attacks that we might be able to see or missing people in those areas? And I know that's hard to say because in Chicago, I'm sure there's missing people on a daily basis. But has it stepped up at all? Have we seen any other kind of possible ties to these sightings?
Yeah, nothing we can connect to. And we've been checking. There have been no incidents that we can connect with that have any involvement with these beings.
So there's nothing. That's so strange, Lon. Looking into the field of the cryptids and cryptozoology, why are you so fascinated by this kind of sighting? Are you more interested in the sociological aspects of it or in the cryptozoological aspects? Oh,
I guess both. The fact that we've had so many sightings of a winged being in an urban area, which has really never happened before that I know of. We've never had a lot of sightings like this other than what happened in Point Pleasant. This is something new. It's grabbed my attention right away. It's interesting. Some people had pointed out to me that it doesn't seem like other cryptozoologists or research or investigators are really taking much of this in stock. But, I believe this is an historical series of events, and who knows what it's going to lead to.
All right, we've got more with Lon Strickler. We'll find out about some of the specifics and where these beings are being sighted. We'll also talk about some of the other things that are going on in the world of cryptozoology when we return. Christmas is right around the corner, folks, and if you're looking for the perfect paranormal gift item, let me recommend Paranormal Challenge, the mini-series I was a part of on Travel Channel. It is out, available on DVD. I've got it available for you, all of the episodes in one 3-disc set. I'll autograph the sets for you. They're $30 a set. And if you'd like to throw in a copy of my book, The Other Side, A Teen's Guide to Ghost Hunting and the Paranormal, it's written for everybody, but they slapped teen on the cover at the last second, trying to cash in on the Twilight market from the publisher's aspect. I do have both of those. The book is $10. You can get both for $40. Or you can just email me and order the DVD set or the book. All you have to do is send me an email at dave@darknessradio.com. We'll invoice you and then send the product out immediately. And I'll autograph the book and the DVD set if you're interested. Again, $30 for the Paranormal Challenge DVD set, $10 for the Other Side book. Or you can get them both for $40. Let me know what works for you. Dave@darknessradio.com. Hold tight. We've got more coming right here on the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
We're back. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness, monsters of the Midway, the flying creatures of Chicago. That's what we've been discussing with our guest, Lon Strickler. Lon, God, I want to call you Ron every time I begin that sentence. Lon, can you just legally change your name to Lon Strickler so it's easier for me to say?
I got all kinds of different versions of my name, believe me.
In discussing these creatures, where are they most likely being seen, and on what kind of rarity? I mean, was it every week? Was it every month? What were you seeing when the height of this was really taking off?
We were getting sightings, as many as maybe 3 or 4 a weekend, and a lot of times it happened during the weekends, which was kind of interesting. Then we'd get a lull for a couple weeks. Then we'd get a smattering of sightings again. The early sightings mostly occurred on the Lakeshore Drive area, anywhere from the, I don't know I'm not really familiar with Chicago that well, but I'd say anywhere along from the planetarium up north beyond.
Now, were these always just flyby sightings, or did anyone ever see them land or standing there?
Well, on the lakeshore, no, they were all flying.
And at what distance were most of these people seeing it? Was it something flying in the sky 100 yards up, 50 yards up? What can you describe to me about that? Okay.
Yeah, it varied. There was a very close encounter on Lakeshore Drive down by, I don't know what the name of that street is. I'd had to pull the report up. But where this thing actually hovered in front of a couple and just suspended itself in the air. You had to excuse the train going by. I live beside a railroad track.
That's fine. So they saw this thing kind of suspend and kind of hang there in the air. Was it looking at them, or were they watching it look at something else?
Yeah, they were stunned because the thing had flown in front of them and they were right in front of a condominium. This thing had flown in front of them coming from the area of the lake and had gone up the side of the building, flying up the side of the building almost to the top, and just stopped there and hovered like it was looking through a window. Hovered for about 5 seconds, tilted itself back, and started diving back toward the trees. By that time, this couple were making their way around to the other side of the building basically they were running, and this thing ascended right down in front of them, about 15 foot away, slowly ascended with its wings spread out. And now this was actually described as having like huge butterfly wings, but there was a membrane. They could see through, the light on the other side. It was dark. And it was interesting because they noticed the legs vibrating as this thing was suspended in front of them. It had very bright red eyes. And in fact, the reaction to it was the woman, it was a couple, the woman actually fell to her knees, became very weak. And that's something that has happened to a few of these witnesses who have had very close encounters. They become very weak and kind of lose control of their bodies. And this thing was suspended in front of them for about 15 seconds or so, excuse me, not minutes.
I was going to say 15 minutes. They could have taken a photograph at that point, right?
Well, somebody across the street was flashing photographs at this thing. They noticed that. But unfortunately, we've never gotten a photograph. But this thing then had its wings spread out and eventually ascended up slowly and then took off. And
were there? Did they say? I'm sorry. Were there any noises that this made? Could they hear the fluttering of the wings? Could they feel the breeze of the wings? Could they?
They felt a very strong vibration, and they thought it was probably coming from the legs. The legs were vibrating very quickly.
Really, the legs were vibrating. That's an interesting aspect of this. Yeah. Okay, and was there any sound? Would it growl, hiss, bark?
No, it didn't make any sound at all, other than they felt the vibration.
And that was so far the closest encounter that's been witnessed?
Well, there was another incident in Bolingbrook, which is southwest of the city. The woman, it was at about 10:30 at night. She was out walking, which was a regular routine for her. And it's a very quiet residential area, and there's this playground where she would walk through at night, and she came across something standing in the pathway of this playground. She noticed that it was tall, but she thought it was actually two people embracing until she got a little bit closer to it, and this thing turned, and it was wide, and she realized it wasn't two people. Now, there weren't any wings that were spread out, but she believes that there was like a leathery covering around this thing, that the wings may have actually been wrapped around it. She didn't see any eyes or anything, but she did hear a noise like it was like a gurgling, babbling sound. I actually think this thing was standing up sleeping.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. But anyway, she got close to it. She said she got within 10 foot of it or so, and then she realized what she was looking at, and she moved quickly off the path to get away from it. And as she got, as she passed and got by it, she started to feel extremely tired and weak. She actually had to sit down on a park bench until she regained her mobility. She kept an eye to make sure this thing wasn't coming near, and it did. And she eventually was able to get control of herself, and she quickly walked around the back of the playground and went home. When she got home, she told her son about it. He wanted to see what it was, so they jumped in the car, and they came back towards the playground. And he said that when they were driving, he was doing the actual driving. When he came up to a couple bushes by the playground, he felt this thing, the attraction, this thing actually got into his mind. And when he looked over at the bushes, this thing stood up. Now, it didn't lunge at them. It didn't fly. But, it freaked him out. And he turned around and they got out of there. So she called me.
How is it none of the big question, Lon, everybody wants to know though is why no photographs? If people are seeing these things for this long, and does that stand out with you as a least likely belief that this took place?
Well, a lot of these times it was at night, which was difficult to get a photograph. I think overall the shock of seeing this thing, and since most of the sightings were fleeting, that they didn't even think about taking a photograph. And in fact, I've asked several of the witnesses that, and they tell me, at the time, I didn't even think about taking a photograph. It freaked me out so bad. I was so shocked. But some of them also told me that it was almost like they were being told not to take a photograph. Now, if you're familiar with a lot of Bigfoot sightings and other type of cryptid sightings, a lot of people describe the same type of thing, like, this thing has like some type of ESP or some type of extra sensory abilities that it seems that this thing can control a person from, doing anything other than paying attention to it. And that seems to have happened here. These sightings were quick for the most part, and people didn't get a chance to even pull the phone out and get a shot of it. We did get one photograph, but by the time the woman got it unlocked and got it clicked it, this thing was at a distance. That was in Melrose Park. So, I'm kind of astounded myself why we're not getting photographs, but, the people, the witnesses explain this to us, and, I kind of feel for them. I can understand what they're saying when they tell us about it.
Right, and I understand because I've seen, the thing I saw in the skies over Trout Lake, Washington. I didn't, photographing it wasn't my thought. It was I just wanted to get closer. I wanted to see this thing. And that's where my mind immediately went. So I do understand it to a degree, but that, even on that side of things, I understand how weird it is that nobody's getting photographs. If these are flying around in downtown Chicago, there should be enough eye in the sky cameras that we should be able to see this stuff and witness it on a regular basis. Don't you think? I mean, shouldn't that be, there should be cameras pointed at some angle that should have caught one of these beings. Has anybody thought to go look at the area?
Yeah, I have made many attempts to have cameras see if people have caught images of this thing. There were several instances, just like the one I was describing earlier with the couple, where a camera was pointed in that direction from the entrance of the hotel. But security at the hotel refused to give me any access. The city of Chicago has not been very cooperative at all. We have asked, we have filed for permission. We have filed Freedom of Information Act request because we had one sighting that was seen by a pair of police officers. We tried to get the report on that. They keep telling us there's no report. We've kind of hit a brick wall with the city.
And they obviously they're thinking it's probably just a waste of time to look into these claims, right? But it's so popular with the public. You would think they would do it just as a lark to say, yeah, there's nothing here.
Well, I tell you, I have talked to several employees of the city. That's about as far as I'm going to go. But a couple have.
No, you don't, Lon. You don't tease me.
Employees do.
Okay, so what were they telling you? You don't have to go specific on who they were or which departments they worked for, but you got to give us a little bit more than that. What are they giving you? What are they tipping you about?
They're telling me, and I've had police officers tell me the same thing, that the powers to be definitely know about what's been going on. But for whatever reason, they're trying to keep it quiet. The media itself has been very mum about this as well. But they know about it. I mean, I have talked to several reporters, and they know about it, but they're not reporting on it. Now, I don't know if the city itself is kind of controlling that or trying to keep the word down on this, but we have hit a brick wall, and like there's 10 of us in the task force, and there are a couple people in that task force that have pretty good connections, and they've hit a brick wall too.
Well, I would guess it's probably the news services that deem it a story not worthy of carrying.
Yeah,
if it
seems that way.
Did they carry or talk about it at all during the Halloween season? That would have seemed like the perfect time for them to do the old tongue-in-cheek X-Files theme storyline of it, which they always do, right?
Yeah.
Did anybody cover anything in the Chicagoland area regarding that?
Well, by the time Halloween came along, the sightings had really waned back, and I think we had 2 sightings even in October. But no, I didn't get, I wasn't being interviewed for anything like that.
Right, not you in particular, but did the Chicago News carry it at all?
Oh, they did. I mean, there have been several. There's also been a rap artist who's got a video out and did a song about the Chicago Mothman, and oh God, yeah, there have been several different things. There are stickers and T-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff going out, are being sold. So yeah, I mean, people know about it, and
right. But the news did cover it.
Covered it.
Okay, they did. Yeah, that's what I was just curious, and I'm sure they did it.
The Chicago Reader in particular has covered several times.
Great. Well, let's, all right. So we've got all of these sightings. You said 54 in that you take more seriously than the others. But if you had to put an overall claim on it, how many total have come in for sightings?
All together?
Right.
I'd say around 60, maybe.
All right. So, wow, out of 60, really, you've only discounted about 6 of them. So 54 sightings you found to be pretty credible or interesting. And that's pretty impressive, especially, I mean, in the world where you kind of tread and you are interested in the cryptid kind of world. That's pretty spectacular to have that many people that have come forward and seem to have a very relatable, understandable story to share. Is there any other time that we've seen any other cryptid creatures have this kind of rise where there is so many sightings of it in a generalized area?
Not that I can think of, other than Point Pleasant.
Right. Well, but that was just, how many times was it seen in Point Pleasant? I was under the idea that it was only seen a handful of times.
Yeah, there were a lot of sightings that were reported that I don't believe were actual reports, but according to John Keel, I think there were about 40 sightings that he reported on altogether.
40 total sightings. Okay, so there was a considerable amount in that. And from what time to what time? I mean, how long was that span? Do you recall?
Yeah, that started in late 66 until the bridge collapsed, which was in December of 67. Then there were a few sightings after that. But like I said before, the TNT area, the area around the Clinton Park, the wildlife area, there have been sightings for years. And Mason County and in and around other counties around the area, I have gotten Mothman-like sightings ever since I've been doing this.
If you live in and around the Chicagoland area and you have not spoken to Lon or one of the task force, and you've seen what you believe to be these flying creatures in and around the Illinois area, anywhere in the Illinois area, email me, dave@darknessradio.com. And I know that we've got quite a few Native American listeners as well. If you're familiar with this being in your culture, and you have a name for this creature, or why it would be there, what it might represent, please email me and let's talk. I'd love to have you on as a follow-up, perhaps on our Monday show, and we can chat a little bit about this. Again, email me, dave@darknessradio.com, dave@darknessradio.com, and include your contact information, and I'll filter any information I get back to you, Lon, as long as the listeners are willing to share that with you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've just got to guess there's got to be something going on with this. All right, aside from the big bird creature, the winged bat, the Mothman of Chicago, whatever we're going to call it, what other cryptids seem to be very active this year?
This year's been pretty slow. I'll be honest with you. I had been working on this, Butch Wachowski and I have been working on these sightings, these upright canine sightings in Pennsylvania, but that's been slowed up. In fact, I think we've only gotten one report this year of something similar to that.
Now, you talk about these upright canines. I like that, right? Everybody's got their own name for it. Are these falling in the vein of things like skinwalkers, of werewolves, dogmen? What's the difference in the cryptozoological world between a dogman and a werewolf?
Well, my definition of a dogman is a quadruped that has human characteristics to it. It may have a body itself that looks kind of human, not as much hair. A lot of times they kind of have that sloping back like a hyena-like being. They're usually pretty good sized, but they're quadrupeds. Now, I have heard of people just, referring to bipeds or upright canines as dogman. I mean, I just don't refer them like that. I just call them upright canines. And these upright canines, well, these are quite interesting. They're huge for the most part. I mean, they run anywhere from 7 to 10 foot, some of the descriptions we've had. And if you're familiar with the Underworld series of movies, the Lycans, the werewolves, that is pretty close to the description we've been getting of these beings. They are huge chest and then the thin torso. Yeah, it's really amazing.
Do you ever get frustrated by all of these claims, all of these kind of creatures, because there's nothing definitive? You're not able to find a telltale chunk of hair. You're not able to find scat that can be analyzed and investigated. There's no photographs of these creatures that really exist. And when photographs are captured, they're so blurry. I've got to guess, cryptozoologists have to be the most patient beings on planet Earth, because you're ridiculed, you're scoffed at, you're looked at as nuts. You're wasting your time going out chasing down monsters that don't exist. And what keeps somebody like you going, Lon, that just keeps investigating these claims? Is it the hopes that one day you're going to come face to face with one of these guys? And if so, what's your plan of action if you go out on an investigation and run into a 9-foot-tall dog man, Lon?
Well, that's just it. I don't know what I'd do, if quite honest with you. A lot of these witnesses were hunters and they were armed, but they always, when they saw the size of these beings, they kind of thought again about taking a shot at it, not knowing what's going to happen. Overall, these beings that have been reported to us from central Pennsylvania, they stand their ground, but they haven't been aggressive, but I'm quite sure they probably could become aggressive. But yeah, I mean, I don't really get that frustrated, not as much as I used to. I think I get more frustrated when people try to explain away what people are reporting, and when I know that it's just no way that explanation is even valid. I think that's what frustrates me more than anything. But I've been interested in this. I've had encounters myself, so it's been. I know for the most part that these things are real. And it's just a matter of finding the truth and trying to figure out where they're coming from, why they're here. And that's why this series of events in Chicago really fascinate me.
Yeah, understandable. It's interesting, right? It's exciting to have the possibility that there are things out there. And let's face it, all zoological beings were at one time cryptozoological, right? Because they just didn't fit any format until we found them. And we're able to study them and give them a title. So that is what occurs. Now, Lon, I understand what you're saying when you get irritated by people's responses to what these things are. Because I'm often fascinated when I'm told, after I'll have a guest like you on, and I get, it's funny, our crypto shows seem to download quite a bit more than any other topic. But I get more hate mail regarding crypto shows than any other topic. And it's, this is nuts, this is crazy. It's obviously, and then they give me some of the most batshit crazy answers. And I'm like, wait, this is logical to you? But the fact that there is a 9-foot furry creature living in the woods is completely impossible. But your version of what people are witnessing is possible. A Russian trained bear that escaped in 1932 is probably still stalking the woods, and in your opinion, that's more logical in 2017 than another bipedal hominid creature that could coexist with us and is just very good at cloaking itself. And I get the weirdest responses on that. So I understand what you're saying. Sometimes it's like, and especially in ufology, too, it's like the explanations that people give to try to debunk it sound loonier than the stuff that we're hearing just as a straight up eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, I've had a lot of personal theories about cryptids in general. I do believe that there's possibly an interdimensional aspect to them. And I'm just not talking about Bigfoot or Dogman or upright canines or anything else. I do believe for the most part, and I actually believe that for what's going on in Chicago, that these are beings from an alternate reality that have somewhat gone through the veil. And some people are seeing, and I'm not saying that everybody can see these things, but some people are seeing it and reporting it enough so that they are shocked by it and don't understand what's going on. They're trying to get an explanation.
I'm fascinated by this. As much as I'm not an avid outdoorsman, I am fascinated by the possibilities of what these creatures are, what they could be, what's going on. And I'd love to see something, but I'm curious, as a real researcher, Lon, if I told you, go to the corner of Wabash and 7th tonight in Chicago, and take a rifle with you, because I guarantee you when you see this thing, you can shoot it and it will die. You will get it. You'll have your proof. But the only way you're going to have that proof is by killing it. Would you go out on the corner and shoot this thing down?
No, I wouldn't do that.
For absolute proof, to vindicate all of the research you've done for the years, for the notoriety it would bring to the cryptid universe, and realize that just with the death of one bizarre creature, it may open up the belief and research, solid research, into investigating other claims of this ilk. You would still pass on that?
I probably would. I mean, it's just that, I guess I would have to answer. I mean, I could only answer that under the actual situation. But I am so against people that feel like they're obligated to go out and kill one of these beings. It's just something
But you do see my point
for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I hear this all the time. I mean, but I don't know. It's not the fact that maybe if something's found and it's proven that I won't be doing this anymore, it'll kind of solve what's going on. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on the situation. I can't really answer that, to be honest with you. I hate to see something killed for the sake of proving that it's real. I mean, that just kind of works against the way I feel about life. I mean, I don't know. I guess it just depends on the situation. I can't really give you a good answer on that.
Yeah, I've waffled on that myself, thinking, what would, the overall deal would be great, because that would be the proof that science would need in order to take it seriously and move forward in the research of this. But man, would you be demonized? Could you imagine being the guy to finally kill a Bigfoot and have the body to prove that you killed it?
I think at this point there are enough people out there that say or believe that they should kill one of these things. If they feel that they have to do that, that they have the ability to do that, well, who am I to say that I'm going to say that they're wrong, but, if they say they can do that find. But, so far nobody's done it.
All right. In wrapping up here, as we're talking about all of these different beings, are we seeing any other state, aside from just right around the Chicagoland area, are there any other states that are also witnessing a rise in flying creatures? Could it be that there are portals? I would guess that if a portal has truly been opened, they wouldn't just be confined to the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, there have been some reports coming out of Milwaukee during the same time period. I had been told of 2 of them, though another researcher's looking into that. I haven't heard any follow-up, so I don't know, what the full extent is on that. But Florida itself has been a hot spot for these type of sightings historically. Pennsylvania, Texas, and I would say they're probably the main states as far as these flying beings. And I'm just not talking about humanoid. I'm talking like pterosaur or huge birds or whatever. I mean, for the most part, I think those are the states where most of these type of sightings are coming from.
The skies are so policed now because of 9/11 and things like that, and certainly where the world is. Don't you think if there were things like pterosaurs, that would be already confirmed by the government?
Yeah, well, it may be, but who's to say the government's not saying anything?
All right, but in your opinion, what would be the harm in admitting, oh, you know what, there is a small living pterosaur family that still exists. They could grab it, habitate it, put it somewhere where it's safe so it won't get wounded or destroyed. We can try to save its species. I know Jurassic Park comes to mind, and that never goes well for anybody, but why not take it to that level? I would think that the government wouldn't lose anything on that. They find new species every year. And finding something that, hey, this is a potential hazard, we're going to take care of it because, obviously, if they're out there, if I recall correctly from my 8th grade interest in dinosaurs, pterosaurs are meat eaters. So it would only behoove us to have the government step in to clear an area to make sure that we're not dealing with, carnivorous, angry, flying missiles that want to eat us or our children. I just don't see that. That's where my problem falls in with the whole idea that the government is hiding and colluding to keep these things out of the, I
don't know.
Out of the,
it's
main
a good question.
Stream, yeah.
I mean, it is a good question. But, why does the government do anything they do? I mean, there are a lot, of course, there are things that we're not told about. Just UFOs come to mind as far as disclosure and all that. I have heard so many stories about the government and Bigfoot, especially in the area where I used to live at near Washington, D.C. and around Baltimore and all. I mean, there have been so many stories that have come out of that area of Bigfoot and the government and other places as well. Who knows? Who knows what's really going on behind the scenes? I have looked into several sightings that may have had some type of government involvement. That is something that had been covered up. People talk about just like the Dulce Underground and UFOs and aliens, all this stuff. It makes for a good story, I guess. Some people really believe in it. I believe some things I'll report, and I just don't particularly buy into it altogether. But who knows? I mean, who knows what's going on?
Let me ask you this, Lon. I love to ask researchers this, and then I'll let you get going. So I put you in a cave, back turned. You hear something moving, a growl. If you could turn around and at that moment witness once and for all 100% proof that it exists, would you want to turn around and see a dog man, a werewolf, a Bigfoot, a flying pterodactyl, a Mothman-like creature? What would be your holy grail to turn around and finally see and know without a shadow of a doubt this is real? You're up close, you're personal, you're safe, but this is your one chance to see it. Which creature would you want to encounter?
It would be a flying humanoid type being.
That would be your favorite.
Yeah.
That would be the one that you'd want to
yeah.
experience.
The Mothman flying humanoid phenomena has fascinated me for many, many years.
All right.
It's the one that really, I guess it's my holy grail.
No, everybody's got a different take on it. Yeah, I'm curious. Lon Strickler, thank you so much. How can people find you? What's the best way to catch up with you and your show and your research and programs that you're doing?
Well, you can go to the website, which is phantomsandmonsters.com. You can sign up for the daily newsletter, and
we have a link up to that to today's program, phantomsandmonsters.com.
And I have written a book about the incidents in Chicago, which is going to be coming out in just a couple of weeks. It's going to be titled Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's Winged Humanoids. And that'll be available on Amazon when it's released.
All right. Well, it's always great catching up with you, Lon. Let's not make it so long in between visits again.
Sounds good.
Thanks a lot. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, if you like any of the guests that you've heard on our show, you want to get their books, you want to get their DVDs, any of their research, you can go check out darknessradio.com and click on the Killer Deals link. That'll take you to our Amazon page where we will proudly post all of these books, including Lon's, as soon as it's available. So you can find Lon's book and all of the rest right there under one umbrella, and it's easy to find. Plus, we've got some other cool items up there. We've got some Bigfoot swag. We've got some UFO swag. We've got some monster swag, ghost swag. It's all right there. Go check it out for yourself. darknessradio.com. Click on the Killer Deals link. And remember, darknessradio.com. Keep checking it out for new stuff and what's going to be going on in our world. So that's it for today. Be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on Beyond the Darkness.